Hi everybody, it's Lydia here. So today is Tag Tuesday and this week's tag is the On My Shelf tag as created by Ian Broom, who I will link below. So let's get started. Now what you do with this tag is you have 5 randomly generated coordinates that correspond with a numbered shelf on your bookcase and a book on that bookshelf. So for example, if I had the coordinates 3, 2, I would go to the 3rd bookshelf on my bookcase and pick the 2nd book on that bookshelf, which is The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haddon. So them's the rules, let's get started. So before I started recording, I randomly generated 5 coordinates on the computer, and the first coordinate was 410. So 4th bookshelf, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And the book that corresponds to that coordinate is The Complete Tales and Poems of Edgar Allan Poe. Now I'm not even going to pretend like I have read this entire book, because look at it, it's massive and the type is tiny. So I'm not even going to pretend about that. That said, I have read a number of his stories and poems and I absolutely love his works. I'd really recommend checking them out, particularly if you're into like Gothic literature, and actually that's how I kind of came to love him, because I studied that in high school. I think my favourite kind of short story of his is The Masque of the Red Death, just because I love the kind of imagery in it. It's very poetic, and as are a lot of his tales. And honestly, I just really enjoy reading it, especially as well. I love having a kind of complete works of books, because it means that, you know, if you just kind of feel like dipping into something, you can just pick a short tale, and these are quite short. They're only like a few pages, some of them. So, you know, if you just want a bit of difference today, or you're in the middle of a book and you don't fancy reading it, it's really nice just to pick up a book like this and dip into it. So I would really recommend Edgar Allan Poe if you haven't read any of his stuff already. So the next coordinate is 5, 7, and that corresponds to Death at Intervals by Jose Saramago. Now I haven't actually read this book. I bought it after reading Blindness by the same author, which I absolutely love. It's very dark and I'd really recommend reading it. It's basically about one day people just suddenly start going blind, and how that kind of causes the world to completely change. But it's really interesting. I'd really read it. I think there's a film of it, but it's not very good, so read the book. But anyway, this is kind of in a similar vein to that. It's basically about one day people stop dying, and while this may seem great at first, after a while things start to go wrong, and undertakers start to go bankrupt, that kind of thing, and it has this whole ripple effect, and until one day when people start dying, but only after they've received a letter from Death himself. And this is great until one day Death gets a letter returned to him and he's not sure what to do. I think that's the gist of it anyway. But yeah, I keep meaning to read this, haven't got around to reading it yet, but having rediscovered it today, I will endeavour to read it in the next few months at some point. So the next coordinate is 217, and that corresponds to Someday Someday Maybe by Lauren Graham. Now I'm not even going to pretend like I didn't buy this, because I love the Gilmore Girls and I love Lauren Graham. I totally did. That said, it is a really fun and amusing book. It's basically about this aspiring actress who moves to New York, and she sets herself an ultimatum that by this date she wants to have achieved a certain kind of level of success, and it's basically how she strives to do that. And I studied acting at uni, and I'm possibly thinking about it as a career, so it's interesting to me, and I would honestly recommend reading it. It's a really fun, light hearted novel. It's very much a kind of summer reading novel, and yeah, I would recommend reading it. Someday Someday Maybe by Lauren Graham. The next coordinate is 18, and that corresponds with Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. Now this is kind of one of her more underappreciated works. You know, if you compare how many times Pride and Prejudice has been adapted in comparison to this one, it's quite significant. And it's basically about a girl named Catherine Morland, and she is a bit of a daydreamer, and she is very much kind of obsessed with fantasies and things like that, particularly Gothic fantasies. And it's basically about how this gets in the way of her meeting someone and falling in love with someone because she kind of has all these ideas in her head, and that just gets in the way of reality, really. I do really like it. I would say it's, you know, it's not as good as Pride and Prejudice because it obviously is her first work, and that really shows. So it's not bad. I wouldn't say it's bad in any way. I don't think any of Jane Austen's books are bad, but yeah, it's just slightly less mature, I guess, which makes sense because she wrote it, you know, when she was a teenager. But yeah, recommend reading it if you haven't already. The next one is 322, and that corresponds with Saturday by Ian McEwan. Now, this is a book that I never finished, and it's the only Ian McEwan book that I have read that I haven't finished, and I'll tell you why. I love his writing, it is so beautiful, and I really enjoy reading his books. But this book, nothing happens. It's very much lots of description, and I got really far through. I don't know how far. I was probably like a fifth off the end, and nothing had happened, and I was just getting really frustrated, and so I just gave up on it. I do kind of want to try it again because I did enjoy the reading experience. I just got really frustrated with it. But if you like Ian McEwan's books, this is actually one of like his, I think did it get nominated for something? I think it might have got nominated for like one of the big prestigious book awards. I'm not sure, but yeah, as I said, it's beautifully written, but there's not enough plot development for me, so that kind of let me down a bit. So that is the end of this week's Tag Tuesday video. I will be back with another one next week, and I will be back tomorrow with a Top 5 Wednesday video, so I will see you then. Bye!